Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Ben, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, brother?
I'm very well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming down and spending time, mate. We have tried, and we said about this morning, we've tried several times to get ourselves together, and you've been you've been incredibly open. When I first sort of came across your story, and you sent me over some of the content and the journey that you've been on, both personally, but also with UK Fire and Rescue Service, I think it's one of the very few occasions, and I said it this morning, I'll repeat it now, where I felt sincerely overwhelmed with, it's like, and I genuinely, almost, on several points, I had to go back and read again because I was like, no, this can't be the case. No, this can't be the case. But your story is quite a well-known story in UK Fire and Rescue Service because of how harrowing it's been and the journey you've been on, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd say that the truth's stranger than fiction.
Very much so.
To say the very least. But I felt it was important to try and get it down more than anything else to prevent anybody else following my footsteps. The old cliche, if you're not able to be a good example, at least act as a horrific warning.
Hey folks, I wanted to jump in here and just share with you a really exciting update from our partner William Wood Watches. They are launching the first ever field watch collection. Now it's named Fearless, which firstly, absolutely love, and this new collection is very different from anything they've ever launched before. However, you will see that they've managed to maintain some of the signature William Wood watch elements. The big thing for me is that black fire hose. So they have got the first ever time they've done this, the black fire hose strap, and a really, really cool case back. So now the watches are available in 3 colors this time. These are red, orange, which is my favorite, and the yellow. Each watch features those straps that are made up from repurposed black fire hose. That stuff looks the absolute bee's knees, guys. They've never done that one before, so go and take a look at that. And they've also got a textured dial to represent charcoal. Honestly, I never know how they're going to keep going deeper with this. Every time they do, I'm like, where are they getting this from? But I know where they're getting it from because they're speaking to the boots on the ground. They're speaking to you, they're speaking to me, they're speaking to firefighters and frontline operators and getting just these amazing insights. The creativity in this is amazing. Now, the case has come down in size from 41mm to 40mm. And another new thing is they've got a unique firefighter helmet visor case back. So flip it on the back. In fact, go over to the website and you'll see the photos. That visor case back, guys, it just looks absolutely incredible. Now, the watches are available to buy immediately, like right now, and they can be delivered within 24 hours in the UK and 48 hours from UPS collection in the US. The link to William Wood Watches is in the notes below this episode. You will not regret it. I am 100% putting this on my list. I'm going to be nagging them like crazy because I know you can pay in 3 stages as well. You haven't got to go in full whack on this. The new Fearless collection, William Wood Watches. Go check it out. I say that exact thing to my kids. I'm like, is your life going to be an example or is it going to be a warning? Do you know what I mean? But I think yours can actually act as both. And I say that with optimism, and hopefully we'll unfold that as we come through. I know with certain things of our conversation, and it says within your book, we're going to respect names, dates, and things like that, because there's certain things which may affect people that are currently still operational. But I don't want that to take away from your ability to tell your own story. So take us back. I mean, when did you first even have the idea of joining the fire service, and when did you join?
Well, realistically, I'd like many people, been in school and worked hard academically. I was fairly gifted at sport growing up. Started judo in 1983 and started playing rugby and was, fairly talented sportsman approaching international levels at both. And I always thought that my life was going to be in professional sport. Got to the stage in my late teens, really first bad injury, which was a reconstruction of my right hand. No pun intended. Ended my. It didn't end my career, but it ended that real sort of top level.
How did you do it? Because I see the scar on the back of your hand.
Yeah. Oh, it's. I'd like to tell you something great, and it's probably one of the more mundane stories. We were training in the gym, and somebody told a joke and dropped a 20-kilo plate on my hand and shattered the bones in them. So
It's the stories like that. The first big injury I had in the gym was where I had partial ruptures on both of my Achilles, and it was just messing about in a leg press, like one of the last sets, and we never usually take the safety locks out because it was a leg press.
Yeah, a hack squat type.
Yeah, and a hack squat type thing. Yeah, and you're doing it inverted. But you don't usually take them out because you're only doing 4 or 5 inches of movement. Yeah. But when I jumped in, my head was in 2 places. I took them out and I finished and just let it go. And it just collapsed down and squashed my feet in that. And then the lads had to pull all the plates off. And it was just those moments of complete stupidity. It was nothing heroic. It wasn't a big competition and so many things like that. So it was around that moment when you decided to look at other things, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite strange, really, in that the team I was playing for at the time used to do these dinners, community dinners, so on and so forth. And I was at one of those with Cass over my hand. Got talking to this little bold fella, about 5'2", who was the Deputy Chief Fire Officer of Tyne and Wear at the time, a guy called Alan Holmes. He was also head of the Fire Service Sports and Social Association, or Sports and Athletic Association, for many, many years. Yeah. And we got chatting, what you're doing, what are you going to do? Well, I don't know, so I'll be out of contract. Have you thought about joining the fire service?
So you're actually under contract with esports, sorry?
Yeah, I mean, that was...
Wow. So you really were doing quite well with it.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have, made it. I think that any professional sport getting paid for that is a real privilege. It's the best career you can have. I mean, in certain ways, the fire service is, or certainly was, a very close second. In
you're
many,
paid to mess about and play with toys.
In many ways. Yeah. I'd like to say, performing under pressure for the
100%
for the enjoyment and the good of many, or the enjoyment of the few.
So when you first had that conversation with him, was that the first time you'd ever thought about it?
Yeah, it was the first time. I mean, again, one of my cousins who we mentioned in the kitchen was serving in one of the larger combination brigades in the UK. So I'd had an awareness of it, and when I was younger, I'd also considered potentially sort of military career as well.
So you look like you'd suit the military.
Well,
in the nicest possible sense.
Yeah,
people say that to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, there was something that would have appealed to us. I mean, I've got the greatest respect, for those that have served in the military, and I think the way we treat our veterans in this country is nothing short of criminal. But I'm sure we'll cycle.
We'll come back on that.
Back around to that. So having a discussion with Alan Holmes, and he said we're having a recruitment drive. It was the old cycles where every 5 years or so.
Yeah.
He said, let me know, and we'll get you on the application thing.
Did you take him seriously? Did you actually think about going for it?
And went to see him at the old headquarters building, which was in the middle of Newcastle at the time, one of the dens of iniquity that city centre fire stations.
That's some nice places, but Newcastle can be a whole lot of places.
Once was, yeah. It was when it was thriving as well. I mean, at that time, up in the northeast, Newcastle was rated as I think it was the 3rd best party city in the world. But you were coming off the back of that cycle of Kevin Keegan's entertainers football and things being on intense. The up, and well, the first Labour government were pumping a lot of money into the economy, and everyone was having a great time. So I got pointed in the direction of a few people prior to applying. Go and visit your fire station, find out what it's about. Came across a guy called Sean McKee, who's we'll mention him later. Very, very good friend of mine. Applied, fortunate enough to get in on the training course, which at the time I think it was 18 weeks. Tyne and Wear didn't do a residential.
Did they not?
It was a day. Cause most people lived within. I mean, Tyne and Wear is very small geographically. I think it's only 104 square miles.
Really?
But it's very, very densely populated. I think at the time it was about 1.2 million. It could have altered with migration in, migration out. Again, got through training and in a lot of ways struggled. Not physically, but Ironically, with obviously going on to being heavily involved in fire behaviour and BA, I was probably either second last or probably last on my course in terms of the BA.
Really?
The BA component. I mean, I went back 9 months later, having worked consistently on station and got the top marks. But
What aspect of it did you struggle with?
particularly at the time, I remember it was the old guidelines. Do that, and in the big gloves at the time, tying knots. A few months after having my hand reconstructed, was difficult. And again, it was a different era for training in that there was, they tried to add a little bit of sort of pressure and psychological stress, even to the extent the instructors walking around banging pots and pans, next to your head while you trying to tie a guideline off, or whichever
Do you think that
round
works?
turn 2 half hitches. I think at the time they knew what they were trying to achieve, trying to put somebody under a form of stress to do something, but perhaps didn't execute it in the right way.
But similar to many things we've sort of discussed before we came on this morning about cultural and stuff like that, what I think now is we've thrown a bit of the baby out with the bathwater, where we're like, don't want to apply any stress at all, and we don't think it's fair, and we're worrying about bullying recruits and all that sort of stuff. And because I think, just what we're trying to effectively talk about there is noise and distraction and unforeseen things, unforeseen noises and events in a room, which is entirely expected. There's going to be bangs, there's going to be creaks, there's going to be things. Something's on fire, for God's sake. There's going to be random noises, happening around you. So I do think we should have an element of that. I worry about trying to create too much of a clinical, sterile environment for people to do something in.
I'm sure we'll cycle back round to simulation versus live training at some point, but I couldn't agree more. Perhaps the ways that we execute it need to change, need to reflect the information that's now available to us. I mean, I read a book a few years ago now called The Chimp Paradox by Professor Steve Peters.
Fantastic book.
And it's information such as in the book, to paraphrase it very quickly for the listeners. It's about the brain having sort of a logical side, or a machine, and having the sort of emotional and passionate side, the chimp, which is stronger. And it's about, under times of pressure, being able to step back and engage the machine and think logically, think correctly under pressure, and perform precise movements. Or in Steve's working with top level athletes, so golfers, to get that absolute sort of strike on the ball for your athletes, and then going into the Dave Brailsford marginal gains for the cyclists. But we should be looking at that kind of thing for training anyway, and thinking, what kind of mindset do we want to stimulate with the recruits, with people operationally? I know that Bill Goff, who we'll expand on later, or Dr. Bill Goff, as he is now, Bill's PhD is all about firefight safety, decision making, psychological stressors, and so on and so forth. And hopefully the findings of Bill's research and his doctorate will be looked at by the right people and implemented into training to put people under the situations of stress.
It's acknowledging those both sides, because I remember when I used to train as a lifeguard when I was very, 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 very young, and they always used to say, and it was one of the best things I heard back then, was the only difference between you and the victim is the mindset in which you enter the water. That's the only difference. You're both going into an environment you shouldn't be in. And I think so much of that correlates into firefighting and fire behaviour and what we do there. So much of it is about mindset. And you don't want to encourage that idea where people go, just get control of yourself and just do that. And you're like, don't ignore the chimp, to come back to that chimp analogy, because the chimp is there to keep you safe. The chimp's there to keep you alive, So acknowledge it and go, oh, yeah, Christ, I'm feeling a bit pressured here. I'm feeling a bit scared, or I'm feeling a bit anxious. Acknowledge that, and now I'm going to think rationally. I've acknowledged that. It's like when people go and step up on stage. I know you've spoken to groups and stuff before. Recognizing that energy can be used both constructively and unconstructively. Do you know what I mean? It's how you choose to harness it. But also, you've got to give the chimp a place to play safely. Don't always try and ignore it.
I agree. I mean, certainly in a firefighting contest and context, I spent most of my time sort of outside, pointing and things like that. But certainly the time I did on the tools riding in the back, it is sort of the chimp, the passion that gives you the energy and the adrenaline, but it's being able to then focus it sort of rationally, and that's where sports, particularly contact sports like rugby, ice hockey, in your context, whether it's judo, karate, whatever, those skills and those qualities really come into their own. And I think it was a sad day when the sports started really getting taken off the agendas, both in schools but also in the fire service as well. I mean, first few years at work, I was away playing sport all the time.
Yeah. And I think there's a really important factor about that as well, that teaches so many things, so many like skills that we don't talk about, so many intangibles like leadership, like teamwork, like going through, we spoke about simulation earlier from fire behaviour perspective, but simulation for teams and team building and stuff like that, sports no better. Do you know what I mean? Coming together to go against a collective adversary and pushing yourself physically, that builds bonds. And now sometimes we moan that officers and even firefighters or different levels of different services struggle with empathy and struggle with connecting with people because they're not doing something like a sport, like something where they can build those.
I mean, it's. I bet you're not expecting this reference, but I believe it was it the Duke of Wellington that said the Battle of Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton?
I haven't heard that one.
Obviously, the
it makes sense.
Being that that sport or that collective struggle was there. Now,
so for people that don't get that reference, Eton College, and this is a great example. So somebody we just had released an episode from a guy called Chris Selleck, and he went to private school. And a lot of private schools, Eton's a great example, and some of the great rowing cultures that we have in universities in the UK, they do sport every evening of the week and they compete on Saturdays. That's pretty much textbook at most private schools, private colleges and stuff like that, because they know, even though academically these people will come out ahead of a public school, yet they do so much more sport than a public school. So how do you add that up? Because it plays such an incredible role in character. We've spoken about character building already this morning. Yeah. Character building in team sports. There really is nothing quite like it. Even if you're in an individual discipline like judo or something like that, having somebody throw your ass to the mat 50 times a week is humbling.
It certainly
sucks ass having somebody come bring their body weight down on you.
I've been humbled frequently since 1983.
So take us back. We had the 18-week training. And then you were in, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was on station in the old-fashioned days, and posted up into the West End of Newcastle, which was very busy at the time. I had 2 stations covering that area, and I was fortunate in that I went to a steady watch. The people were okay. Obviously, perspective changes as you develop your experience. And again, it was reflective of a different time. The guy was a sub-officer, had watched England win the World Cup on duty.
Wow, different culture.
So he'd have worked with people that were serving before the Second World War. And
what was it like? What did you think it was going to be like versus what was it like? The first day you turned up for on watch. Was there any differences? Was it exactly what you thought it would be?
It wasn't quite the sort of out-and-out sort of sports team culture, because the average age on that watch was probably sort of late 40s at the time. It was a bit of an aging watch, whereas the sister station down a little bit nearer to the city centre, the old station Bravo on the West Road in Newcastle, which a lot of the time wear bods will know. Tim McArdle was a station officer, and Tony O'Donnell, Tony's ex-Royal Navy gun crew, carrying the cannon over
over the assault course.
Yeah, Tony and Sean, who we mentioned earlier as well, both in the same team, I believe. But they had got recruits from the preceding 4 or 5 courses, all younger guys, average age on that watch of about 25. So fortunately, we used to do a lot of combined drills, and I ended up sort of socialising more and integrating with those guys. And as you say, it was when we were off duty, it was sports, but there was a really good social culture. Certainly, Thursday second day shift club. You know
what? I want to actually go on that for a minute, because I see this a lot. Now we're at a time now in the UK Fire and Rescue Services where lots of people are retiring, but you do find the odd watches where it's full of people who are just waiting to retire, which is okay, sort of. If they've less than 5 years to go, or less than 3 years to go, or whatever. And now we're onboarding so much recruitment, I hear a lot of this like FOMO, with a fear of missing out, where you've got like a lone recruit on a watch, similar to yourself back then, where they're with a bunch of people in their late 40s. They're not necessarily getting after it. They don't want to do any physical, arduous stuff. They may be averse to training. Did you ever have that, like, fear of missing out? Like, oh God, I wish I'd have been posted to that station.
Not really, because certainly at that time where obviously it's the smallest metro brigade, I think it's slightly smaller than Merseyside, was so busy anyway that yes, we were trained. We'd train hard, and there was no 45mm hose in training. It was always, you're going to work the big stuff, then you're going to find it easier.
Drag it in
when you're doing the 45 life. But we were getting so many jobs. I mean, secondaries.
So you still had that high level conditioning, really, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a quiet night if you weren't wearing 4-6 times.
Wow.
Back then.
Incredible.
I mean, and it was it was very, very busy brigade. I mean, it had its spots. I mean, some of the Sunderland stations were very, very busy, and those sort of the ring of steel, as we used to call it when we were young and stupid.
Love it. No, it's not.
Around
Love
it.
Newcastle. I hope you had T-shirts with it on.
I wish we could, but we'd have just been ridiculed in the old days.
Mate, you don't think I get ridiculed for this? Come on, this is what it's all about. Doing stuff like the podcast. It's all about falling in love with it.
I hear Soho have got a special station T-shirt.
Good.
Down in LFP. So
they should have. We had a guy on here a while back, Phil Maynard, who does Help for Heroes.
Yeah, I know Phil.
Yeah, he does the hoodies. It's a great thing. I want to be able to give people that pride back, because you go to the States and they're all wearing their... I mean, for God's sake, I'm wearing a T-shirt here from a guy sent to me from Canada. Dave, it's so sad that we don't just have the ability to do our own T-shirts and have pride in what we do.
Well, that's it. I mean, it is certainly, having spent a lot of time in the States as well, there is a real pride and identity in it. I remember the first time I was over there talking at FDIC at the big conference. I had a guy called Mike Duggan, Captain Mike Duggan, who was in charge of Rescue 3, the FDNY, came up to me after the show and he goes, "Hey, buddy," he goes, "I love the stuff." He goes, "It's really, really great presentation, but answer me this." He goes, "How come you British guys don't rock the Smokey Joe?" I goes, "What do you mean, Mike, Smokey Joe?" He goes, "Well, I have a fireman mustache and you don't wear the fireman mustache." I said, "Well, I tried it once, Mike." I said, "But I just looked like a fat Freddie Mercury." So
you probably got to go through that pain barrier, because you know what? I think there's maybe three in our service who, from a couple of years ago, when they did the Movember thing, have held on to it, and it works now. I think facial. I mean, I've been off for a couple of sets now, so I've got a little bit of facial hair, but I can't really grow it very well. But I don't make a massive effort. Facial hair's back though. I mean, the beard culture is massive in the UK now, isn't there?
Yeah.
I think people are really going for it. I think you see younger lads with mustaches. Fucking fair play to them.
Yeah, big bushy beards.
Big bushy beards. It's in now. You don't look like a homeless person anymore.
Wow.
So you run over take us back from the States. So you're at that first station. How early into your career did you decide to start moving into different levels of development and continue that? Because you did lots of stuff. Like, I mean, we spoke even just now about the States, and we're going to unpick all of this.
It was a different environment then. It was a case of the statutory examinations were still around. Obviously, IFE examinations were...
were they mandatory, the IFEs back then?
Around. The IFE ones weren't mandatory then. They're not mandatory now. I know certain brigades have adopted them in recent years following the issues with promotion.
They encourage a lot of their recruits to just do the level 3 straight off the back of training school.
Yeah,
you should be able to bloody pass that. Straight out of training school, you should be able to be passing that. I think it's easier to stay in like a student mindset versus if you do 5 or 10 years not doing any sort of studying, and as a professional firefighter, I'd like to think you are. But if you're not, it's hard to get back into it.
You've got to keep on it. But back then it was a case of if you considered that you had any talent or ability, or you had any aspirations of going up, again, they wanted you to stay in that mindset. Right, keep studying.
What was the support like for that sort of thing back then? And how did you know that you wanted to do something like that?
It was encouraging, really, and it was done on an organic level because things were a lot more decentralised then. There wasn't any kind of real micromanagement culture coming from the top, and it was probably because it was a twofold thing. There was probably less management, but you had a rigid sort of chain of command. But because of that, certainly time and where we never had for many years ADOs or station managers.
Okay.
So obviously each watch had a station officer rider, what's now be a watch manager B for those of the newer generation, and they would collectively do the ADO's job between them.
Love it.
And
so it was more, and I like what you said there about not the lack of micromanaging, because now, like you can find sometimes a firefighter will desperately want to develop, which is great, but the crew or watch manager almost has nothing to do with it, or the leading firefighter, the LF or the sub officer or something like that. It's like they just apply to their training school or their learning and development,
and so you get somebody out here, which it isn't. It isn't the way.
Yeah, I don't think it's the way.
Tyne and Weir did have a really good system at the time because we're integral in developing PPV and different ventilation tactics, but each watch amongst the JOs would have a BAI, a TAC vent instructor, trauma care instructor, RDC or tech rescue instructor, and then obviously any specialisms that were on station on each watch. And at the time, they were still using Morton a bit, but they'd got accreditation that ran a lot of the instructors' courses in-house. I had people from other brigades came in, so the external candidates' fees basically paid for Tyne and Weir's instructors.
I think Tyne and Weir were one of the first to do that, because a lot of people continued to use Morton religiously for like the next 20 years, longer really. I mean, what the frickin' hell's happening with Morton now?
Oh dear. Well, Capita bought it after a clear and transparent tendering process.
Yep.
After it was recommended by somebody who was in quite a high-level governmental position, said that
obviously
it's not profitable, and we'll sell it out from state ownership. And they've kept the trading name, which, from a business perspective, you'd be
silly not
still
to
refer it as a fire service college, but it's not. It's Capita trading as the fire service college. They're a profit making business. They're there to turn things over. But I spoke to one of my colleagues the other day who also teaches down there. They've actually upped the day rate for instructors now. It's gone up to 210.
Wow.
But if you put that into context, whilst you're there, let's take your tax off there for a start. So even if we go at, say, let's go at 20% and, your national insurance.
Which for most people as an instructor there are probably on more than that, because a lot of people retire and become an instructor. So they might be on 40%. But yeah, let's go for 20.
Yeah, let's go for 20%. So let's drop it down
to 160.
So drop it down to 160. And then your accommodation.
Travel and accommodation.
I think 30 or 40 a night there, so it's one. So let's say it goes down to 120, or if someone commutes, I know the person I was talking to commutes from somewhere not far from where I'm from, and it costs them in fuel 25 to 30 pounds.
Not taking into consideration, I was going to say, the fuel prices now.
Fuel prices are outrageous. So even, like, say, you drop that down again to, where are we then?
You're clearing
so
£100.
120, then food. 15, or let's say that
piss,
the petrol and everything there. So you're talking sort of £100. So if you're staying over as well, and there's nothing you can go. The library's always worth going to. I mean, for 24 hours, you're down to like £4 an hour, because it's not really like you can do anything else. But if you go home, I mean, I was talking to her, and she goes out the door at, I think, about 5:30 in the morning, and won't be back generally till 7:30. So 14-hour day when you're clearing that. I mean, your take home's still well under minimum wage.
It's a challenging environment for them, isn't it? Especially now as well. I think they went through a period of time where people perhaps thought they weren't getting value for money. There was students and recruits coming back with still a lot of development. And I know they don't solely do recruit; they do a lot of stuff with the military, they do a lot of stuff with the police. But just from the fire service perspective, a lot of people started to step away from it, didn't they? And they started their own learning and development.
Yeah.
I know we're going off on a tangent here. But
I think the real specialists did. I mean, you've got Steve North and Neil Pedersen run their own business, IRRTC, International Road Rail Trauma Consultancy.
Mm-hmm.
And
well done for remembering the name. We've had Steve on the podcast.
It's our Steve's
guy.
Yeah, great guy, and Neil and the guys they work with. I know Big Al from Tyne and Weird does some with them, and they've got guys that were the real specialists at Tech Rescue working with them. And you've also got likes of Neil Pickersgill on the ex-Great Manchester on sort of the trench rescue side, and those guys are really doing the top level stuff, and they want to push it on, and they've got a real passion for it. And much like Shan Rafael and myself on the fire behaviour side, and I tend to direct people towards them. Yeah. I mean, I was an RTC instructor,
but they don't. I mean, I love to see the entrepreneurial. I love it, absolutely love it. Obviously, we do various things, including the podcast. So that is something I want to harness. But the Fire Service Court is a lovely site. It really is a great facility, and it's such a great resource. It'd be so sad to see it.
Prime Cotswolds real estate as well.
Stunning. I can't even imagine if you wanted to put that for real estate. That site is just millions and millions and millions, probably billions.
The thing is, if you stand out on the motorway, though, you can now see sort of new developments. The houses getting sort of closer and closer.
It's got to have a time cap on it, in 15, 20 years.
It's a strange place. There's a great story why. One of the reasons, allegedly, why Tyne and Weir stopped using it, but I don't think it's suitable for you.
Don't let truth get in the way.
It's there was an incident after a night's drinking, shall we say, and it was in CCTV. Somebody decided to put on a little display for the beautiful security guard, which then immediately got sent. But
they were no longer invited back.
I had a story last year where anybody that's read my book will come across a guy called Dave Wilson.
Yeah. We're going to cover that several times, guys. Now, but just for notes, it's going to be in the notes below the podcast, the link to Ben's book.
But Dave was a great guy, very, very experienced operational officer and instructor, had worked in Hants, Royal Berkshire, retired from LFB, and then went back doing a little bit of work at LFB's training school, sort of the partnership with Babcock. And, for various reasons, and again, we delve into them in the book, Dave took a little bit of a turn for exhaustion. I ended up carrying him out of the firehouse basement up a couple of flights of stairs, ripped open some hernias myself, and it was a hospital thing, and reports didn't get done, so on and so forth. And Dave was naturally, and still is, very upset about it. Now, one of the other protagonists happened to be in Morton, and Dave was up there working a couple of years ago for LFB Enterprises.
Yeah.
And I think there were a few words in the canteen. And the other party immediately went to it's not the commandant anymore, whoever the centre manager is. Dave Wilson said this, that to us, do the other thing. Right, okay, we'll get him RTU'd, we'll get him sent back to his brigade. So one of the staff there goes on some other course. Dave Wilson, yeah, you're getting sent back to your brigade, and your chief wants to see you immediately when you return. Packs his bags, drives up. On his way back to, I think it was either Humberside or Lincolnshire, somewhere like that. A couple of hours later, this guy goes back to the training centre manager or the commandant or whatever. Yeah. Why is Dave Wilson still here? I've seen him over there. No, we've sent him back to his brigade. Different guy with the same name. and then the best part is apparently he made it all the way back to where he was. His chief said, "What's going on?" It all got cleared up, and by the time he was having to go back down there, he ended up getting back coursed onto another.
Bless him.
Another course. Mistaken identity. Now I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but it's a.
It would make sense.
It's a good. It's a good story.
So you did your 18-week training, and then we went into this development. You started looking for, was it LF positions back then? Was it crew manager positions?
Yeah, it was the same. The old system, and obviously we moved into that, and I was fortunate then in that the culture in Tyne and Wear was. Everybody had done quite a lot of work because it was a busy brigade. There was no real sort of sleepy hollers. Everybody had done a bit.
Because you do find there's some places in services where people can hide.
Yeah.
Like you can have a lot of rubbish firefighters gather in a station where they never do anything.
You couldn't carry passengers back then because they'd have been so quickly found out. And again, without being melodramatic about it, there were sort of lives at stake. And if people were slacking or whatever, the watches police themselves. The watches police themselves. The
That's a great statement. Officers. I'm not sure we're as good at that at the minute. I think we've got a bit scared to do it because that collective character correction. Do you know what I mean? Even just firefighter to firefighter going, Ben, mate, that's out of line. Do you know what I mean? You weren't putting it out there. It's not good enough, mate.
Standards Walker.
Yeah, exactly. That beautiful statement. Now, if you said that now. So in certain places, if not said in the right way, and I try and always bend and twist, I try and develop a strong enough connection with somebody so that I can use that language. Because I think if you've got a strong enough connection with somebody, you can still get away with telling them what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear.
Right. I mean, you can do it with a little bit of humour as well.
Yeah, but you don't want it to not come across. There's a great book I'm reading at the minute called Radical Candor, and being able to. They always say connection first and correction second. If you haven't got a strong connection with the person, then you're not standing on a good footing to make a correction for them. And unless it's like when your best mate goes, "Dude, what you said to your missus then was out of line," or what you did to that, you smack that guy. "Oh man, I was out of line." You know what I mean? And it takes a good friend to be able to do that.
It is, and it's right, and it becomes. You've got to strike the balance. Everything's got to be sincere. There's a lot of stuff now, I think, that becomes disingenuous, and it concerns me the direction that the fire service has gone, and micromanagement. But also, we talk about sort of the watch culture and things like that, and junior officers and watch managers, and so on and so forth. And we're not decentralising things and empowering people to make a decision.
Yeah.
And you're getting a phrase that you'll have heard of from sport, paralysis by analysis.
Yep.
So people are waiting for something rather than nip something in the bud earlier.
Let me just call the station officer and check. I need to just send an email to HR. Make a goddamn decision. You make a decision.
Do it. Live by the sword, die by the sword. And
100%. People will respect you for that.
When I was working in those roles, at times, I mean, there's some people. Discretion's the best part of valour, and I look now at some of my old colleagues from the Gateshead era, and who have all gone on to different posts within the service, and I'd like to think in some ways that they perhaps learnt a little bit from me. The truth may be they've thought, well, if this clown can be in charge, I can't possibly do a worse job than him. So, that might have stimulated them a little bit as well. But yes, you've got to prevent things from becoming an issue, and as soon as things become overly formalised, and I would suggest the figure's probably as high as even 90%, and it does become a real issue. And then the watch don't trust the junior officers, and it's an unenviable position to be in now as a crewie or a watchie or whatever roles. They are, and depending on the management style, who's a district commander, are they sort of overbearing? Are they sort of very, are they completely by the book? Have they got any kind of empathy? Are they people person, or are they, protocols and procedures people?
You've got to empower people to run a watch as they wish themselves. For me, as a watch manager, I see it as I'm just trying to create a really big protective bubble around my team, because I always talk to people about control the controllables. When we go to work for 24 hours or 12-hour shift or whatever it may be, You know what? We're in control of most of it, guys. We really are. You know, we can do pretty much what we've got. A couple of metrics to hit. We've got a couple of boxes to tick. Yep, the pump's got rolls out. The pump's got to roll out the door. But we can train whenever we want. We can gym whenever we want. We can eat whenever we want. If we want to go out and see something, we can go out and see something. If we want to go a place and do something, we can go and do it. So the only reason you're either going to love or hate being here, if Ben hates being on his watch, but I love being on my watch, well, the policies are the same, the procedures are probably the same, the uniform's the same, the kit's the same. It's the people. It's the people. What environment are you creating with those around you? So the strength of that relationship is protecting them. You're supposed to be the bullshit deflector. You're supposed to be...
I agree. You take it on the chin.
You've got to take the hits for the team to create an environment where they feel safe enough to perform for you.
And on that particular topic, there's also the issue that I have with credit. When things go well, you know, we credit the crews.
Give it all.
When things go badly, you take it all yourself. Yeah. And there seems to have been a reversal of position with brigades generally now, where perhaps at a slightly high level, where things are going wrong, they're blaming the troops and they're blaming the JOs. Things are going well. You know, they're on the internet or they're on the news, this, that, the other, taking the glory.
So I see it like a game where it's all falling downhill, and if they see a little golden coin come in, they grab the golden coin, then jump out the way and let the shit bit fly straight past and hit some of the things. And that's not everywhere. And I do see some wonderful leaders still in different emergency services, certainly in the fire service. But then those individuals that do choose to operate in that manner have the irony of turning around and going, "Why is it disengaged? Why are you not trying hard? Why don't you seem to care?" And I'm like, dude, I keep getting hit in the face with crap.
This. I mean, and they need to stay out of it because if I'm a DO or group manager in modern terms, if I've got to come to your watch because there's an issue with one of the men or the women,
better be bloody serious.
I've failed. I'll be looking at it and I'll be giving you a hard time and saying, why am I coming down dealing with this? Similarly, if I'm assistant chief officer, whatever, and I've got to go to your district, and you're the DO, I'm going to say, why am I having to get involved with this?
It's not because I don't care. It's not because I don't want to be here. But how have we managed to create an environment for you where your team are not talking to you? Why on earth am I here? Do you know what I mean? Not because I don't want to be here, not because this is not important enough for my time. It's just this shouldn't be the go-to. Leapfrogging the manager. Circumventing it, pinging emails to here and there.
I think people are so afraid now, and I think there is a culture of fear. They're thinking, well, if I don't do this exactly precisely by the book, or if I take this into my own hands and do it, they're going to come back after me. And I don't think there's that confidence all the way up the chain of command now that, such and such is, it's got my back, he's going to look after me. And I saw the change. I started in that environment where if you're a fireman and you drop the bullet, the leading firefighter or the sub-officer would very quickly put you into place. Yep. And also, right, you've done this. Then the station officer, obviously, watch managers. And I always remember one of the things I used to take, if I ever had to do it to people, I think everybody knows when they've dropped
everybody
one.
Everybody knows, yeah.
There
shouldn't be a surprise.
Just have them in and say, you know why you're here, don't you? Yeah. You're not going to do it again, are you? No. Well, how would you do things differently? Do X, Y, and Z. And then we might finish with a bit of humour and say, well, that's good, now get out of my sight, you're a disgrace.
Yeah. Yeah, you just say to me, like, mate, we both know you've completely, like you say, dropped a bollock there. Tell me what your thoughts are, because neither of us want this to happen again. I don't want to be sat here with you. I don't like this conversation. I want us to be sat around a mess table, taking the mickey out of this and sorting out the food. I don't want us to be sat here. How can we not be here again? What we're going to do about it? Do I need to do more for you? Are you doing more to me? I'd like to think it's as simple as you've made a mistake.
Consensus answer, and if people can reach it of their own volition,
yes,
or they know, then why do we as managers need to labour the point?
If you take pride out of the way, they know. Do you know what I mean? If they're an experienced firefighter, they know what they've done wrong. It's very unlikely, because usually you have that underlying feeling where you're like, God, I don't think I should be doing this, or you make a mess up on an incident, and everybody knows, the team knows.
Yeah, I mean, you're completely right. I mean, I remember dropping some ghoulie when I was a probationer, and the station officer at the time called us in. And again, exactly sort of the same thing, right? You know this, don't you? Yeah. Right, okay, get out. And then about 5 minutes later, Tannoy, firefighter Walker, station officer's room. Go down there, knock on the door, come in, get out! And that was it. So we'll go upstairs later, having a cup of tea, and it was fairly informal. I said, what was that all about then? He says, I meant to scream and shout to tell you to get out the first time, but I forgot. But that was that was the humour. Well, then again, we did later that evening put an inflatable airbag under his bed.
There you go. And he took it with good spirit. Maybe
after he peeled himself off the ceiling. But again, it was a different time. But yeah, it needs really, for me, people at principal management level now to be able to understand, again, the things that you've eruditely verbalised there, and that we've touched on, and start saying, yeah, let's start decentralising. Let's put the onus back onto these. Let's give them the support that they need and the training, so the confidence to do it. I mean, we went on, when they moved away from the discipline, 1985 discipline regs to the ACAS moves, Tyne and Weir, to be fair to them, sent all the JOs on ACAS training courses.
Wow. Okay.
In disciplinary management, sickness management, and mediation. Things as well.
Mediation's important.
We were still empowered to a certain degree back then. I mean, it was still an overriding culture of looking at it, and I think that perhaps there's been a disconnect somewhere, and that sort of chain's been broken, and whether that's external influences or we've got generally people now on most senior executive teams or senior management teams in brigades across the country have perhaps not come from a uniform background, which is fine, but unless you've been in that environment, or again, I can't say firsthand, but my colleagues and friends that have been in similar to sort of the military environment, unless you understand that sort of culture in the at the coalface, it is. I can understand why they say, well, we can't just leave them alone running around like independent units. We've got to have this consistency.
Yeah.
But consistency of approach works generically. It doesn't necessarily account for sort of individuals. Certain stations and certain stations cultures where you're really, really busy, it does send people a little bit daft, and they are raucous.
The best watches are where you got that quirky, weird, freaky, mad hatter firefighter. Do you know what I mean? Because they're what make the culture. So you've got to have every recipe's got to have a few nuts.
And they're generally really loud.
Really loud, really sometimes obnoxious, but fantastic firefighters. And they need strong leader with them. They need a strong manager. Yeah, they need somebody to be able to steer that ship.
Or a lunatic in charge of the asylum, as the case may be.
But I say to people, and I think what we're talking about here, I know we're going to come circle on this, is I like to think about it optimistically insofar as if it was that way, or if it was as we're speaking about it now, from your time a few years ago and how I've seen it over the last decade or so, we're now in a really unique position. We're seeing a lot of recruitment across UK Fire and Rescue Service, seeing a lot of senior leaderships retiring and stuff like that. So I don't think that, I'll describe it as an excuse. I don't think that excuse of it's this way, it's that way, it's how it's always been. Well, everything's changing now. So many people are leaving services. So what is going to be the new soundtrack? What's going to be the new backing track? What's going to be the new temperature in the room? We're going to set the new condition. So what is that going to be? Because we've got a lot of blank slates coming in. What's their first few years of experience going to be like? We've got
to address the ways that younger people now learn in the environment that they've come up with. I mean, I can remember doing my degree and handwriting it, and obviously all the notes. And I think one of the first presentations that I gave in the brigade was using an overhead projector in the
the old laminated transfer things.
And we used to overlay, so you'd have like an empty map of your station area. Right, what are the roads? Fill them in, and that kind of thing. But again, we have got to address that and the way that people learn, and they're going to be more in touch with their generation from a community safety perspective.
They will, yeah.
I feel that we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater in that, we've got to meet them and their needs, but they've also got to realise that they're
joining
into a club, and they've got to also bend to us. And I think that generally there's groups that have got lobbies or very good, have got media communication skills and so on and so forth, are getting an immediate response from the fire service.
That's where the eyeballs go, isn't it?
And we've got I'm not going to say generation. We're losing people. I mean, we spoke earlier about some of my friends who are alarm installers, and they were doing an alarm install in a high-rise building in Birmingham. It's a method of where there is a cladding risk. You can put heat detection covering the cladding, change to a simultaneous evacuation, so on and so forth. And I had quite an elderly lady, let's call her dear old Auntie Ethel, was talking to them and saying, what are you doing? And said, we're putting these alarms up. Well, what do I do if it goes off? And asking various questions, and they know to refer them to the community safety department of whichever areas they're working in. And she says, well, I've rang 12 times and always get either an answer phone message or someone will call you back. And nobody's been, and visibly upset by things, scared by what they've seen in the media, in the post-Grenfell environment, various other bits and pieces. And they rang me, knowing obviously I was ex-uniform, and said, what can we do? I said, look, you need to direct her on to West Mids' community safety. Well, she's rang those 12 times. Right, okay, give me the details. I'll try and pass them on. And I was looking at one of the social media channels. I don't use Facebook anymore for reasons that will become apparent.
It's a scary Wild West.
But I went on one of the other things, and the first thing I saw was, the deputy chief of that brigade was dancing in the Pride Parade, which was about half a mile away from where these guys were working, with a number of the staff. But I made the point because it really got to me that I thought, well, somebody's made this effort, and you're not getting back to it, but you've got the whole sort of PR spin. Right, okay, we're an inclusive employer, we've got awards from Stonewall or from whoever, we're doing this, and I think, well, that's great, but you've got somebody half a mile down the road that has been trying to get in touch with you, who's scared, who's got this pressing thing, and they can't get any sense out of you. And I don't think I'm known for mincing. No, I'm not known for mincing, but...
no, totally not.
I was... not known for mincing words, and it really got to me. I mean, I was wound up anyway, and to do a little bit of callback, the chimp took over me, and I commented and said, well, I'm glad that people I know are trying to do your community safety work for you, because you can't get back to people, but the the deputy chief fire officer's got enough time to dance around like a gimp on acid. Which obviously drew, I think within 2 or 3 minutes, I'd got something like 170 WhatsApp messages from employees in that organisation. The laughing emojis. Hilarious. But then the chief, Phil, jumped in, said, well, that's a disgraceful comment to make. You're a disgusting individual. And they went down the line straight.
On a public platform?
Yeah, they went down the line of trying to imply that it was homophobic,
like you were anti against.
And I say I'm not as well. I mean, and that's another thing. It was just a case of the priorities. I felt that they were doing something that was PR friendly, rather than something that's not. And you think, well, are the gay community more important than dear old Auntie Ethel? No. Is she more important than them? No. We're there to represent everyone.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? Because every community and diversity and all that sort of stuff is all part of our culture. But like you say, equally they are a percentage of our culture. So if we look at like the fire service or even the police, emergency services as a whole, there's a capacity. There's 100% capacity. And like you said about priorities, it's saying what percentage of this capacity can, because we're always going to give a certain amount to response, community safety, inclusion, equality and diversity, recruitment, all that sort of stuff. There's going to be a percentage for each thing. But yeah, it's if you sometimes, and again, that was a very unique perspective, but have that perspective where you're you're always one place and you can't be another. Yeah, and when there's a need, potentially, especially somebody like that who's crying out for help and support, they're fearful, they're aware of the dangers that face them because of things like Grenfell and other publicised things. Yeah, you can appreciate from the public's perspective how that can be difficult. And again, we all live in our own little bubbles. If you're somebody that's been horrifically harassed because of your background or because of your protected characteristic, you're going to feel like this is to you the most important thing in the world. And I appreciate that. But so many people like Ethel are not going to get on social media. They're not going to. They've not got their own platform. They've not got their own
lobby.
Yes,
and it is difficult, and it's very, very difficult for each and every fire and rescue service because you can please some of the people all the time, all the people some of the time. You can't please them all the time.
Absolutely.
But the way I figure it is, why don't we have a culture? I was very fortunate to meet and spend time on a number of occasions with Alan Bruns-Cheney, who was the chief in Phoenix, Arizona, who wrote basically created the incident command system, which in the 80s, Kev Arbuthnot, former chief of deputy chief in West Yorkshire, and Bill Goff, who we mentioned earlier, and various other senior managers went to spend time out there, and it formed the framework for our incident command structure. Well, Big Al, his ethos was, we be nice to Mrs. Smith. And the more you thought about it, his overriding view with it was, if we treat everybody that we encounter as individuals and well and with dignity and respect, probably in sort of the Christian sense, do unto others as you'd have them do unto yourselves, said the fact then whether somebody's in a group that represents protected characteristics or sexuality or race or culture, if we treat them all as individuals and well, everything else looks after itself. And I think we've moved away from that, and
I think we're so scared of not appearing that way.
Well, that's it.
That we act always 15% like, if 50-50 is in the middle, we're so scared of looking like we're in the bad bit, we always sit at 75-80.
I mean,
which then becomes our midpoint, and you're like, this isn't a midpoint though. We're absolute. I really genuine, and I know I speak from a bias, but nobody's an exaggerated statement. I hate using extreme statements, but I can't personally recall a person I've spent time with who is operational in the UK Fire and Rescue Service that is particularly malicious, harasses people. Maybe they specifically avoid me because they know I don't tolerate. I don't know, but
I know they might be hiding at headquarters.
and those that have that mindset tend to have been in it for 30-something years, and they're probably on their way out. And many are at senior leadership positions. I don't think we need to bang that as heavy. We've given it some great attention, 100%, and we should allow those most passionate about it to continue to do it. Same as those most passionate about firefighter challenges. They're all going to bang on about it, but I don't think just because everyone's getting fatter and heavier, we should all start doing firefighter challenges. I don't think that's the answer.
I think we've got to give people the support, and also then give them the platform if they want to promote it or educate others about it.
And then let them go with it. It's fine. Get back to what is the priority for us.
For me, in the words of John Lennon, whatever gets you through the night. I don't care whether somebody's...
I don't care.
Yeah, somebody, whether they're...
There's enough of us about now that if a certain amount of you want to do that, there's enough of us to still be doing this, and vice versa. That's fine.
It doesn't bother me, whatever way anybody swings, as long as they come in to work and they give 100% for our ultimate bosses, who are the public. They're diligent in the duties, they get stuck in, they're respect.
They're the people that have got
my most.
I've got the most respect for people like that, irrespective of their background, and some have got some incredibly diverse backgrounds.
That's where we want people, and it doesn't bother me in any negative sense, apart from supporting people as a manager or a leader, as it may be. As long as they want to be good firefighters, as long as they want to serve.
Hey folks, just wanted to jump in with a quick piece around firefighter health and wellbeing. Now, we get a lot of messages and emails into the podcast around firefighter health and fitness, whether you are trying to join the fire service and pass them tricky fitness tests, if you are currently serving, or if you are coming up to that next chapter of your life, retiring from the emergency services. We get so many different questions around it. So in partnership with Fitness for the Frontline, we have come up with a series of guidance and programs specifically designed to reflect the physical elements of the role of a firefighter. So whether it's carrying an LPP across an overgrown field, lifting a ladder above your head under running it, or wrestling with cutting gear for 30 plus minutes at some kind of complicated RTC, our bodies are required to lift, push, and carry objects in very specific circumstances. That is effectively what Fitness on the Frontline focuses on, as well as the longer term aspects of overall health and wellness for our firefighters. There are focuses around strength, endurance, and overall conditioning, all achievable and relevant to our roles. Now, we are definitely not about to be smashing out world records or getting that beach body ready in 6 weeks rubbish. The systems and programs that we put in place are adjusted for people's current fitness levels, and they're not a prescriptive way or a one-size-fits-all BS. We also take into consideration all the fitness testing for initial application and also for current firefighters who want to maintain and progress their fitness levels. It is very likely for myself personally that I'm still going to be a firefighter when I'm 60 plus, so longevity in the role is really important to me, and I know it is for so many people out there. The system has a built-in ability to adjust easily depending on the equipment you have available, your fatigue levels, or if you're coming off busy-ass night shifts and you haven't got a lot of time to work out. You can record your results, log your weights, your body measurements. We've got all the facilities to do that. The system is yours to use how you want to train. We've taken all the fluff and the gimmicks and the BS away from most of the rubbish that you see out there, and this is designed by experienced operational firefighters and qualified people, including myself, with members of the team available to contact throughout the time you are within us in the program. If you ever get stuck, if you're starting to struggle, and also to celebrate those wins and achievements with you. It all starts with no obligation, 7 days worth of the programming, absolutely free. So whether you're joining, serving, or looking at the next chapter in your life, have a glance in the link for the podcast. Fitness for the Frontline is designed by firefighters for firefighters. Now back to the show.
And it's about service. It's about serving the community.
Remember, you are a public servant, and that's sometimes a frustration for me, in that some people I hear speak about the old times and they speak about great managers, kind of how you have done today. They speak about leaders they've worked for before. Now they can get into a little bit of a toxic sort of recreational negativity, I call it. That I say, and they'll have a member of their watch join, and this person might not be the stereotypical great firefighter that they think. They may be...
Well, it's your job to make them.
God damn it. You've literally, and I thank you for doing it, you've literally taken the words out of my mind, because they're like, oh, when I was all started and I had so-and-so, they, firefighters didn't come in like this. And I always go, I'm like, right, okay, so if so-and-so were here now, what would they do with that firefighter? Would they be like you are? And they're like, oh God, they can't do this or they can't do that. You've seen them fumbling around the fire engine. I'm like, why are you not stood with them? Why are you not going through the lockers with them?
Yeah, take them out to the lockers, pull the
Why are you not doing that?
With them.
The person you admire will be ashamed of you right now. You are not what they wanted you to be, because instead of helping that person, instead of developing that person, instead of taking all this knowledge you say you've got and pouring it into that person, you're bitching and moaning. Yeah? You are not leaning in, you're leaning out. Yeah? Sorry to go off on that tangent. That just grinds, you're absolutely right. Grinds me.
And again, it goes back to having that decentralised command and people wanting and knowing that they're empowered to take that responsibility from firefighter level through your JOs, your crews and your watches, and having that kind of culture. Now, if said recruit or probationer doesn't want to meet you halfway, and they want to be idle and they don't want to do it,
can't send ducks to Eagle School. Do you know what I mean? Some people with the best of intentions. Our dog just joined us.
We've talked about sort of horses to water. I mean, there is some people you need to take to the water, hold their head in, stick it under them, and actually force them to drink. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one of the things that watches have got to want to do, and
we've got to take that personal accountability.
It's a bit of professional pride as well, and morale comes into it in a big way. I mean, realistically, we're still dealing with a lot of legacy issues from...
People feel burnt from strikes, from no pay rises, from things like that. Control the controllables. Come on. Yes, was it wrong? I agree. We all agree. We can't keep singing that song. Can't keep singing, because it's affecting what's happening now. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. And the management have got to, or the senior leaders have got to really sort of reach out, and there's got to be a cultural change.
But that's my biggest message to those people now, because there are new people moving into those roles who will hopefully share your thoughts. I'm sure they will share some of it, not all of it, but some of it.
It's very difficult. I'd hope so too, because it's now certainly firmly my generation are the people that are the chief fire officers and the principal officers, those that have come through a uniform route, and most people are on the run into retirement. But certainly their successors, they've got to. They're going to be in a position where they've got to then take responsibility and be brave enough to go against perhaps some of the stuff that NFCC are putting out and make a stand against it. But I do worry, because I feel that a lot of the people that have been promoted have been rewarded for compliance and conformity over perhaps, innovation, free thinking and different approaches. And
I've had that in a fashion said to me in a number of times. I went through about 18 processes to just do my crew manager thing. And on many of them, I had people would say to me, hey, I think you're really passionate and that you're just a bit too much of a gamble. And what I mean by that is you're either going to do something great or you're going to explode in my hand like a grenade. Do you know what I mean? It's either going to be really good, or you're just gonna shoot a civilian by accident because you're a bit out there, mate. You're a little bit not sure. You know what I mean?
So they take sort of a soft option, or
let's go for the safe option.
A safe option, but
let's go for Jimmy. Jimmy's a yes man. Jimmy will like it. Yeah, Jimmy will do it.
Ultimately, then Jimmy's
sterile.
Can't deal with an issue. If you've got two people...
You can't have uncomfortable conversations.
Having a bit of aggro on a watch. Next thing you've got...
He comes out waving a policy in his hand.
Yeah, and then you've got a station manager involved, then a DO, and you've all of a sudden you've got people getting written up for something that could have been sorted
just handled
with 2 or 3 minutes in the office.
Yeah.
You
two, now, wind your necks in, right? You speak first.
Yeah.
You'll have your turn. Sit there. Be quiet. Yeah?
Both
Come on,
of them
let's work through this.
And then when they've done it, you swap the crew around and sit them on the TL together all afternoon.
And they get people, so what happened about that thing that happened this morning? Nothing happened. We had a chat, it's dealt with. Oh yeah, but no one's getting involved.
Yeah, it was a different,
not had a written,
time.
Not had a formal. We had a conversation about it. That's what's happening. If it happens again, yeah, absolutely, we'll take some action against it. They're aware of it.
I used to run a tight ship. Unfortunately, it was a pirate ship. It was one of our guys, first day on station, comes in. I've got the DO in a headlock. Fortunately, it's that old pal of mine, and we're just like, got to just do that. But again, I mean, that kind of thing can't go on for good reason. But it does worry me, because I think we've got 5 or 6 years where things have got to alter, otherwise they're creeping sort of privatisation.
Yeah.
With Capita now running the Defence Fire Service under contract.
You'll have people like that going, are you getting a grip of this? Yeah, are you getting a grip? 3 more years? You know what? You can't do this, can you? Right, I'm going to take it off you. You've had your opportunity. Now this is what's going to happen. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to get paid. No discussions.
I think that's going to come, and I think that
I sincerely hope you're wrong.
The brigades that are under police and crime commissioners could be the first to go, because it's
very efficient for them as well, isn't it? That's why.
Well, they couldn't.
I think they might bring it under the banner of efficiency of having a, like you said, police head of police, chief of police, in charge of local authority, fire, rescue, and police.
They could do, but if Capita take a contract, they can. I believe the process called TUPE, TUPE. Yeah. So they can bring governmental or local government employees over, and I'm not sure about the finance aspects, but you could find that they suddenly take over one of the Shire brigades, and it's, it would be unprecedented, and people would be very, very rapidly looking at the contracts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And between us, I wouldn't have faith in the Fire Brigades Union to be able to stand up against the might of a governmental-backed large PLC. such as Capita or Babcock or whatever, saying, well, we've got a track record. We've successfully run defence for X amount. We've done this. We've invested this. We want to go at local authority. And then I think it'll be a PCC-led organisation they'll take first, then probably a combo, and then it'll be one of the Mets. So I can see that happening unless there really is some public sector reform.
What role do you see the HMI stuff playing in that?
I think the metrics that they use are difficult because I'm very sad. I actually still read all the reports.
I think that makes you sad. I think that makes you interested.
This brigade is performing well, but what are you measuring it actually against?
They say not everything that can be measured is worth measuring, and not everything worth measuring can be measured.
It is something for you.
But you've got to have a metric, though. You've got to have a performance of some form.
Yeah, the listeners might find this quite interesting in that I wrote a letter to, again, a large metropolitan service about IRMPs or strategic plans and budgeting. And we talked about, I said, well, what are the real costs? So, for example, there was a Holiday Inn Express hotel that cruise attended. I'll tell you where it was. It was Walsall in the West Midlands. And, I've spoke to, I know a lot of people. I'm from that area. And we were talking to them and said, right, the crews were on top of this job. They'd gone for sort of the good stop. So, we're going to isolate the fire in this area, try and use the internal protection, which was compromised a little bit, but you passive protection, box it in, put the fire out. You've got a section of the hotel out of use. Apparently, officer turns up, right, there's no life risk, default to defensive, pulled everybody out. Next thing you know, gone.
Lose the building.
Whole lot, car park, somebody's waving the NCP flag off the back of the back of the pump. But the net cost for me of that, I think, well, I'm actually from the next town over, but Walsall, it's not a holiday destination, shall we say.
Yeah.
So people are using that hotel, they're coming into the area to work. So let's say there was 100 rooms. What's the average there? Do you reckon £50 a night?
£50 a night, yeah. Maybe a little bit less, but yeah.
So let's say, okay, so per night, 100 rooms, 50, that's 5K. 5K, 35K a week. Yep. And then most people, I would have thought, would then spend the same again in the area.
Food, social, whatever.
And it's bringing money in. Yep. So let's say 70K coming in per week because of that. Because of that.
You're going to lose me fast, but times that by, it won't be 52, but 40 or so.
By 50, let's say £3.5 million a year.
Socioeconomic impact of that is colossal.
If that's closed for 18 months, then we're up to a stage where we're, about 5.5 million.
Yeah.
But while that's closed, there's also the knock-on effect because the people that have worked there who can't be shifted, like the housekeepers, the cleaners, have potentially lost a job. You've got the local companies that do the laundry and everything; they've lost a job.
So their income's not going to their family.
The caterers. And then there's more strain on the welfare system, so on and so forth. So let's say that,
and also inside the family, feuds in couples, and
little Johnny doesn't get his Walsall Town shirt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I know that's a side bonus for him, but
it's a colossal effect. John McDonnell, one of our
absolutely
previous guests, was a massive advocate for offensive firefighting because
and this.
It's that conditioning of running the drills first and foremost, but it's like you say. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, you're right. But that tactical decision there to withdraw everybody has actually cost £5.5 million when you look at it that way. Now, a brigade the size of West Mid, second biggest Met, about the same size as Greater Manchester, they're going to have at least one of them a month across their divisions. So you think, well, if every one of these is costing £5 million over a year, that's £60 million of loss economically in terms of socio-economic political cost to the area. So if you've knocked £10 million off your government budget and said, aren't we great, we've done this, well, not really, because if you'd have spent that other 10 million, you might have saved 60 there if you've got the resources on the ground, the quality of the training and the decision making,
empowering people with that decision making.
So for me, IRMP,
not scared to death of going, It's not worth a firefighter's life. Well, hang on a minute. There's a big spectrum between going defensive and a firefighter dying.
Exactly.
It's not a switch,
You're
one
right.
or the other.
You're right.
Competent, well-trained individuals in that building would have been perfectly safe.
Yeah,
and they were.
Again, it needs risk management, and they're on top. They were winning. So IRMP for me is flawed unless you look at that context. I think we're protecting lives, but also livelihoods, buildings and environment. And for me, that's where your senior leaders of brigades have got to start making a case to central government. I know the Central Fire Brigades Advisory Board's not been around for years, but to have the strength of presence of character to stand up to the political paymaster and say, yeah, well, if you knock £10 million off of this budget here, it's actually going to cost 50 or 60 million there. And they're not doing it now.
We said this before about the difference between virtual training, which has some benefits, but like you say, if you did have the capacity to put people into those environments through wonderful training resources and
train them, have enough people for a start, to train them, to allow them, then it's going to, it will pay for itself. Because you're not having that negative impact on the.
I suppose from a HMI perspective,
economy.
like when we were just saying there, it's a harder thread to tack through when you're looking at a sole metric.
Exactly, you've got to step back and have that perspective. But I made this point on. I
think you should be interviewing him, not me.
Well,
he needs to reply to the emails.
Well, maybe I did make the point, and again, somebody came back to us, the chief officer. What qualifies you to talk about politics, Ben? I said, well, would a degree in it suffice? But
it certainly would. But even for me, I always say to people, look, I've got a couple of qualifications. I've got a 5-meter swimming badge and things like that, but I have an opinion, and I think if we can conduct, we're not going on everything, but I want us to have a healthy debate. Healthy debate is good. Not going to have an argument.
Well, it is.
Have a debate.
I don't want people to agree with me all the time and say, "Yeah, Ben, you're great." You know, you've not that they
just massage your ego. Be no use.
But if people want to disagree with me, and tell me why, because that then forces me to either to consider my own perspective,
question your own thoughts,
and either we think, okay, you're right, we can alter that, or it affirms that, no, actually, we are heading in the right direction. We're doing it, but it's always valuable to be given sort of pause to think about 100%. Stuff.
I love being proven wrong, but I think so many people back down because they're worried about having an argument. I love having a debate, and I always say sometimes I poke the bear a little bit because I like a debate. Because if you say black t-shirts are the best thing, I'm just going to poke just to see if you're made of paper, just to see if you don't really believe that. I'll go, actually, I think blue's the best. Do you know what I mean? And you say, oh, yeah, actually, you're right. I'm like, well, I don't really care. But I just wanted to see how much you believed in what you were saying. And I want you to do the same to me. And if you can defend it and give me some great statistics as to why it's the best, then I'll go, yeah, you know what? Yeah, maybe I'll say,
do you not like the detailed embroidery in this silver there?
It's super dry.
Just throws it.
Throws that extra bit down there.
Like
that's it. You'd say, well,
this
isn't just a black t-shirt. This is a super dry. I go, right, okay. But then we'll have a debate.
This is
a V-neck super dry. Blah 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 blah.
Deflect from my lack of height.
It's a visual illusion.
It was Nick Lacey told everybody they saw me in Slater's buying Cuban heels, but. So whenever I meet anyone now, I'm actually 5'10", but because most of the bods I know are really big guys.
Yeah, he's not. He's 5'4", telling you.
Yeah, well,
he's on a stool at this table.
That's what he did.
Swinging his feet.
Yeah, that's what he did say for the laugh. But we enjoy it. I don't. Do
you have the little sticks to reach down and push the pedals? I don't think it's quite that bad.
No, not yet.
Firefighters Podcast is a global podcast seeking to develop, inspire and motivate the world of the emergency services operators. Through a series of wide-ranging conversations celebrating those within our sector, we seek to encourage and support this incredible group of people. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield, and I speak with individuals from all walks of life who I sincerely believe can add value to or develop those who have chosen this life path. Please support your emergency services wherever you are in the world, and thank you for listening.